Washington's added 2 more blue chip recruits.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this whatever watch or listen to the day it is for you this afternoon as we are releasing, because Lars, there's so much big news to talk about. But first, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, Lars, peek behind the curtain here real quick for all Dave Davis. You and I were recording, as you know, I'm still here in the great state of Massachusetts. We were recording early, trying to get out of the head of the Jonathan Epperson news and get some stuff ready with that. And then we knew Baron Naone was going to commit at some point this week, drops it right then and there, literally the minute after we stopped recording. So we said, okay, we're going to, just get to all of these. And then, now there's Vander Ploog, D'Aryhian Clemons is in the boat, Dominic Macon is in the boat. So we're going to have a really fun show. And we're going to start with the first guy right there that I just mentioned. And that's Baron Naone, the number 1 player in Oregon and a 4-star tight end that is so much fun to watch on film.
Yeah, again, these are all guys where we don't want to ruin the moment and just, let them do their thing. But then once, we start to know that the news is coming out, it makes it interesting. But this is a big get for Washington because we knew that Washington basically identified 3 tight ends in this class.
Yes.
Caleb Edwards, Vander Ploog, and Baron Naone.
Now, there was a 4th, and AJ Ia, who committed to Arizona State like really early on in the process. But it always felt like that those were like the main 3. Yeah.
Exactly. And especially for Jordan Palpo, getting the basically 2 of your top 3 guys that you wanted, that, right now they're getting Baron Naone, that's the biggest one, honestly, for me, because when you look at what he brings, again, everybody will say, well, where's the Oregon offer or whatever the case may be. If Oregon wants to let a recruit go out of the state, so be it. It's not a concern for me, especially when you consider he's so natural. Again, not maybe as polished as a pass catcher as Vander Ploog, but very good in the zone right in that regard. And for me, just it's the quintessential stacking talent at a position of, let's just say, need, but not necessarily overwhelming need. We're like, it's not overwhelming in terms of like, oh, it's not like the equivalent of a quarterback, is what I'm saying, or like a defensive tackle,
sure.
But it's a very good, important position. And so having that position taken care of with 2 4-stars, it's just a great start for Jordan Palpo.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so the first thing, as you said, I like that you pointed out that, yeah, he is a very natural pass catcher. He looks really nice. He's just not on the level of Vander Ploog, who is just such a phenomenal pass catcher to watch. Our good buddy Ben Glassmeyer compared him to Dalton Kincaid as a pass catcher, which I really like that comp from his time at Utah. I think that's a lot of fun. But the one thing I like about Baron Naone is, the 247 guys, we love what they do. We respect what they do. They said that he could just as seamlessly fit at defensive line or on the edge if he wanted to. And I think that shows up so much just when you watch him block. And that's the thing. And that's why this combination of guys that they ended up taking in Vander Ploog and Baron Naone is so exciting, where it's just like, I've seen some comparisons like, oh yeah, it's the old days of a combination of Drew Sample and Cade Otton. I know it's something you said as well. And it's, that's fantastic. I love that combination. It's 2 guys who can really catch the ball well. And as Ploog, who's, a little bit on the lighter side right now, if he can fill out his frame and get up to 230, 235, 240 even, that's a guy who, with his frame at 6'6" and his super long arms, can also be a guy who can be a really nice blocker. And then all of a sudden, you and I were talking about 12 personnel and just some of the concepts that this offense likes to run. all of a sudden having two tight ends who can be legitimate threats for you, whether they be in line, whether they be split out wide, all of a sudden that just adds a whole new layer to your offense. That's so exciting and so much fun to watch. And something that, Chris Peterson did really, really well in his time here. And we didn't see that under Jimmy Lake, when we didn't see anything really under that regime outside of fantastic play in secondary. And then, Kalen DeBoer had some good tight ends, but with the receivers that were on campus, it didn't necessarily matter. And there can be some good receivers here too, but this really does feel like it's going to change the way that Washington's offense is run.
It will, but I'm glad you mentioned the Chris Peterson, because what's the overlapping correlation? It's Jordan Palpa. So I think,
yeah.
And having, I was going through his 2 for 7 list last night, and just if you type in which recruits Jordan Palpa has gotten, it's 4-star, 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 4-star. Oh, there's a 3, 4-star. And even in Arizona, you're getting Keon Burnett, and there was a few others that he got down there, where there was so many guys that Jordan Palpa, it's just a nag. It's just a nag. And if you think about, I'm glad you mentioned his blocking prowess, because Jordan Palpa does have an offensive line background, and I think that really has started to grow working with Jedd Fisch, because Jedd is such an offensive mind. You can kind of combine the two, where you're not going to have a Tanner McLaughlin be every single type of tight end, but you want to have, if you have a guy like that, more power to you. But it's getting 2 or 3 different body types in that room. And also shout out to Papa for going back to Oregon again, because you get Charlie Kroll in the 2024 class, and now Baron Naone in the 2025 class. Obviously not the same caliber of recruit, but you're still talking about 2 guys that, probably have some familiarity, and it's just a good kind of stomping ground, especially considering some of the other commits that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely. And, with that being said, we've mentioned him here, but let's spend a minute on Vander Ploog here. And we're going to have fun and go through all these commits over the course of the show. But this is a guy who I really want to spend a lot of time on, because there's somebody who, Dash Beerley's out there tweeting about how much he likes Vander Ploog and the chemistry that the two of them have from playing some 7-on-7 together and that sort of stuff. And that's really exciting. But this is the kind of guy where the more I watched his film, I remember watching it the first time and just kind of looking at his frame and saying, okay, I'm not really sure what I'm in for here. And watching him just, play X receiver, play in the slot, just not really play much on the line of scrimmage. And then, looking at his body type, just saying, okay, this is great. I love this guy. I love this take where, he doesn't necessarily have that physical readiness to play right away in terms of what his weight might be at right now. But I think he might surprise some people earlier than you might think in his college career, because of just his prowess as a pass catcher. Where that's somebody where, like you alluded to a Tanner McLaughlin a minute ago, Arizona loved to split him out wide. They love to put him in the slot and do some of those different things with him. And I feel like that's exactly what his role could be at Washington right away. And then the longer he's on campus, the more he develops, you can move him in line, do some of those other things with him a little bit more.
Yeah, and if you think about it, we saw that with Decker DeGraff this spring, where we're necessarily, are we going to see him play 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games as a freshman? Probably not. But we did see Dalton. Now I'm thinking of Dalton Kincaid. But we did see Decker come along in the spring, and I think that speaks to everything that you're saying, where if you can kind of just design a couple of things for him, like as a 4-star, you're going to come in with talent. Maybe depending on how the room might shake out, you might not necessarily be a starter or, need to burn your red shirt. But I think he might be a guy where he's just that frame. You can't replicate that. And especially when you look at the roster next season, who is going to be on it. Quentin Moore is going to be gone. Ryan Otten will be a senior. There's a few other guys that will be on that list. But there's no real big, tall. I mean, Jeremiah Hunter is going to be gone. So you don't have that big body where, you might not want to burn his red shirt, but hey, if you can go posterize a 6'2" linebacker or safety or nickel in the slot or whatever you want to call it, you're going to play it. And I think that will be something we see this fall at the tight end position that we'll get more of an appreciation for with these 2 commits and, moving into 25, 26 class and things like that. Because since we haven't seen it except for practice, we don't necessarily have the full idea. Because as you mentioned, they're not going to be Tanner McLaughlin, but you can have a version of that. And you can't, again, you can coach size to a degree, but you really can't coach that kind of size.
Absolutely. Lars, we got more about all these commits after the break. And we're going to send a message to our good friends over at FanDuel because I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going wherever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And I got a fun parlay for everybody out there. You know, I gave out a daily one with a couple of games yesterday. Didn't pan out so well. I like this one a lot better. It's more of a futures, a season-long sort of thing. Paul Skeens for NL Rookie of the Year. Let's not go Cy Young just yet, even though he's going to be up there. And Ceddanne Rafael for AL Rookie of the Year. I like that parlay right there. You're getting some nice odds on it. Highly recommend you go check that out on FanDuel. So, Lars, I still want to spend another minute or two here on Ploog because I just really like the way Washington has not just attacked tight end in this class, which, you know, you talk about not being like the biggest position of need earlier, and I agree because, you know, it's somewhat overlooked when you just look at the grand scheme of things. But on Washington's roster, especially when you look at the offense, I feel like it might have been the second most important need behind offensive line. Where you look at receiver, and depending how the position shapes out, maybe Denzel Boston comes back for another year, where I know that's just projection based on everything we talked about over the course of the spring. And then you look at just where quarterback is going with the future of DeMond Williams, most likely. I feel that just with the amount of bodies that Washington had at tight end, especially the inexperienced bodies, like, yeah, you're bringing in 2 high school freshmen. We're not going to act like they're experienced in any way, shape, or form. But just the way that the talent stacked up at other positions, and this is no offense to any of the guys in the room, where it was just less because there are less bodies. It's just such a thin position that you needed an influx of both depth and talent. And it's something you and I talked about where it's, hey, are they going to add 2 tight ends? We talked about this throughout the spring. Are they going to add 2 or are they going to add 3? And it seems like the room is set with 2. If Caleb Edwards says, hey, I want to commit, maybe you find a spot. Is that going to happen? We'll see. Probably not. But when you look at it, that's a really great tight ends class. And moving forward with the coaching that, you know, Washington fans especially have seen Jordan Paopao provide for a number of years before, you know, he left for his time at Arizona and everything else. This is a really, really strong room. And moving into the Big Ten, you need some of those big time pass catchers. Look at Iowa's anemic offense. They always still have a standout tight end. And that's something that can really, really help in the Big Ten. And I think this is such a fantastic get for Washington.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because I couldn't have almost said it better myself. Because when you think about what the tight end position does, it's not just the pass catcher. It's the 6th, 7th blocker. It's using mismatches, and especially in the red zone and things like that. And we've seen the tight end position at times really be hit or miss for Washington. Where you mentioned it with Drew Sample. Guys as a 2nd-round pick in last years in the NFL, and there's guys like Hunter Bryant where we thought, you know, might pan out a little bit differently, and it didn't necessarily turn out to be the case. But why do we say all this? Because you have to stack the talent. It's not just getting one and saying, okay, we'll have just Baron Naone or we'll have just Vander Ploog. It's no, you need to appreciate there's a extra emphasis on this position in this offense. And so I'm glad that they take it with 2 4-stars because it's what everybody's been saying. Where are the 4-stars? Where are the 4-stars? There's 2 of them at one position and they're not done.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's such a nice thing with just this class in general where, you know, getting, and with that being said, let's kind of jump into some of the other guys here. Let's go just in sequential order of when they actually committed. And let's start with the number 5 prospect in the state of Washington, defensive back D'Aryhian Clemons from Spanaway Lake. I love this dude, man. Watching his film, he's a little on the skinny side right now, but again, that's okay, especially for being like a high school kid. But he's such an incredible athlete. Just when you look at his track times and you look at some of those other things and how they translate to the football field, he moves his hips so well. He's got really great feet. He's got really disciplined eyes. And the more I watch him, the more I think, yeah, this is the kind of guy that John Richardson loves, where he's not as prototypical, you know, 6'3", 205, whatever. You know, you look at what LaRue Zamorano is, another guy who's gotten those Washington crystal balls at 6'2", 175. When you look at some of those guys, D'Aryhian Clemons doesn't necessarily look it physically, but you watch him move and you watch him play and you say, yeah, no, this dude is going to be a stud. And it continues the trend of what we were talking about. that getting some of the top players in the state, that's really nice. You really like to see that. And then just on top of that as well, this class was so offensive heavy for a little while. Now seeing some of those defensive guys, we'll get into Dominic Macon as well. Seeing the defensive guys start to roll in, it's okay. Yeah. It might not have been some of the bigger names that they had on campus a couple of weeks ago. A Darius Dixon and Adonis Curry, who canceled his visit and goes to Texas A&M. It's not some of those names, but you watch him play and you say, oh, I don't care. This dude can ball. Like with a year or two under the right coaching staff, this guy's going to be a star.
And it's what we've said about John Richardson, where he knows how to identify talent. Obviously, have the relationship with Deshaun Lee, well documented, all those sort of things. And so you take those shots, right? You don't just settle for the 3 stars like we would see, a couple of former staffs do, where we don't really want to go in those tough head-to-head battles and use those resources. No, we saw John Richardson take a couple of big swings, and maybe not that he missed, but just that they're not in the position at Washington under Jedd Fisch that Alabama, Georgia, X, Y, and Z are in. Ohio State, with these guys that are entrenched 3-4 years out of school, we've seen Jedd Fisch be able to carry those relationships over, but not necessarily all the way over. This is an example of John Richardson, who has recruited the state of Washington for a defensive back before, knows the talent in the state, and say, you know what, I've been able to develop this guy, and this guy. I can see your traits. And I remember you asked him during spring camp about, his love for tall cornerbacks. And he's like, look, I just love dudes. Like, I just love guys that, really come and bring it. Like, if they happen to be 6'3", yeah, I'll absolutely take that. We all would. But there is also something to be said for being a little, not short, but shorter in that regard to potentially play against the slot and nickel. And that's one thing that I think with Clemons, where I'm not necessarily saying he'll be as a nickel corner, but I could absolutely see just all those guys getting a shot there because Richardson wants to just give everybody a shot. Again, not people aren't a fan of it, but hearing the comparison to Jimmy Lake was the same type of mentality where he would apply guys at 2 or 3 different positions. He wouldn't force you to stay there, but he wanted to see, could this 6'1" guy hold it down in the slot, or should he go back and be a safety? Should he go just be an outside cornerback? Having a great defensive backs coach, that's what you get. And so having John Richardson understand, okay, D'Aryhian Clemons has got the size, I can make it work. I know D'Aryhian wants to improve a little bit in terms of physicality, but you could even see that where, you might not see it, but you can feel the physicality. And so for me, that's an important get, especially in the state. And knowing that some of these guys, you might think, okay, well, we could wait and get you in June, July, or August. No, we want to just get you now because we know if you, by the time we get to September, Michigan State, California, some of these other schools are going to start coming around. And then it might be not too late, but then we're making our lives harder here. Absolutely.
And so I want to circle back to one of the things you said about the physicality, where that's why I pointed out that he's a little on the skinnier side right now, which again, with, these high school prospects, that's okay. But the fact that mentality is there, that's what he wants to do. That's what John Richardson loves. That's what he loves to see. And the more I watch him, the more I think of current UW nickelback Jordan Shaw, where just the way he moves and the way that he does like to attack and is in that same frame, that same build where, he's 5'11", 6 foot, whatever he might be, and just still loves to attack, loves to play physically. And it's just all about adding that strength and making sure you can do that effectively, but still moves really fluidly, has nice feet, has good hips to just turn. And if you get beat deep, and the one thing where I think Clemons could stick on the outside if he wanted to is that deep speed, that long speed, that just ability to recover, where there are times where it doesn't look like he's beat, but he just almost looks like he's baiting quarterbacks on his film where, he'll let the receiver get a couple steps behind him because he knows, all right, I don't think this quarterback has the ability to beat me deep. So I'm just going to stand here. I'm going to act like I'm getting beaten, and then I'm going to recover. And I love that. I think that's awesome. That's like just playing a video game in real life. I think that's so much fun. And that's one of the things where when I watch him play, I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to just kind of put a bow on that, where when I watch him play, like once, he got scheduled for the official visit, I circled back around to his film. I said, oh, I could absolutely see this guy work under John Richardson.
I agree. I was going to say, especially when you saw when I saw Arkansas start to creep out, that was one for me where it's okay. If SEC schools are going to identify you as talent, let's start to take this a little seriously. And one thing that a lot of these in-state guys did was they reached out to the staff to want to stay home. Now, it wasn't that they were locked in and, saying, hey, like, I want to stay home no matter what. But I think they had an appreciation for what Washington could be last season, seeing them run to the national championship and saying, hey, you know what? Those guys maybe didn't care about me as much. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Let me tell this new staff, hey, I think I want to, I think I can be a good fit for you guys.
So you bring up a fantastic point where one thing that D'Aryhian Clemons said to Brandon Huffman was he was ready to commit after the Pac-12 championship game, and he held off. Didn't necessarily divulge super far into the reasons that happened, but Jonathan Epperson was the same thing. He had a commitment date set for January 17th, 18th, somewhere in that ballpark, and then Kalen DeBoer left. And all of a sudden, you don't know what's going to happen with some of these guys. And, you watch the way that Jedd Fisch's staff operated, where it didn't feel like right off the bat, the in-state guys are the number one priority outside of a Zajus Rennie Sale. And then, as they kind of came back around to those guys, and as you said, it seems like some of them reached out and said, hey, we want to do this. We want to make sure that we can, stay home and do all this. That Jedd Fisch's coaching staff and some of these in-state guys really came to an understanding of, yeah, no, we can make this happen. And I don't want to say it's a happy accident of any sorts, because that's not what it is, but it's the coaching staff doing a really, really good job of identifying talent. And almost like what Scotty Graham described doing with Adam Muhammad, just saying, all right, let's be really careful. Let's see just how long we can wait before saying, all right, we need to snatch this guy up right now. Where I feel like that's probably the best way to describe it. And Lars, we still got one more just incredible talent to get to after the break. Right after a message from our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. For all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So, Lars, I try not to get overly excited when talking about some of these recruits. I know I just said incredible talent and everything, because I absolutely mean it when I'm talking about Dominic Macon, the 3-star defensive tackle from Oregon, who also committed, earlier here on Tuesday as we're recording this. And that's a guy who, watching his film for the first time, just with the way defensive tackle recruiting has gone, it's really curious to see how this looks. And then you go and you take a look at his film, and instantly it's, oh, this dude has a motor. He's got an incredible wingspan. He just plays so hard. And it's something where he very clearly hasn't received a lot of coaching to this point in his life, which is probably why he's such an underrated prospect right now. But all those things are okay. That's all fine. Where when you look at just where just defensive tackle as a whole is on the West Coast in this class, and you see a guy like that in the 2025 cycle, you watch him and you just say, yeah, no, this is a guy. And just like with some of these in-state guys, it's all right, let's see if we can keep him a secret any longer. No, we need to offer him and snatch him up now. Okay, let's do that. And the coaching staff did a really, really good job of getting this guy in the boat quickly. And he looks like he could be one of the biggest risers just as he receives more coaching and as he gets into college that we see on the West Coast in the cycle.
What's really funny as I was taking a step back yesterday and thinking about some of these commits that were coming. What's funny is in the 2017 class, Washington got Marlon Tuipulotu and Elijah Molden out of Oregon.
Yeah.
When Marlon committed, some actual sites had him, I believe, as a 3-star / 4-star. He was eventually a 5-star number one player in Oregon, all that sort of thing. I'm not saying Macon will have that type of rise, but I could absolutely see where the similarities in terms of this is an underrated prospect from the state of Oregon, which is, again, it's almost like you wonder, well, why doesn't Oregon offer, or do they feel like they could offer in October and November? Well, I think we've seen some of these recruiters, especially on the defensive side of the ball, hey, if Washington's going to identify me early, why would I bother waiting for some other offer? And we've seen that with some other kids, where Chase Sims gets, the Washington offer, then Texas A&M, Texas, all these other schools start pushing towards the end and get those last couple of visits. Washington's like, okay, well, we took our chance with you, but if we're going to wait any longer, we got this guy in our backyard who we'd be a fool to let go as well.
Right.
So it's a good measuring stick to try those big Texas battles, try and go down to the South and see if you can pull one or two guys out. If you can, more power to you. If you can't, it's always good to identify talent closer to home. And this one, to me, especially, getting Baron Naone and these other guys from the state of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest in general, I think it kind of just makes it more of a regional thing than it does. It's easier to make it a regional thing than it is to make it a truly national thing where you're getting a kid, 3 kids from Florida, 2 kids from Texas, 1 kid from New Jersey. It starts to get a little too pieces to the puzzle, but that's in a way what college football is becoming anyway. So for me, it's a great addition because, as you mentioned, he's got the size, he's got the frame, everything projects well, but it's the ability to identify talent even after you maybe have narrowed in on the guys you actually want, where this is another guy where comes up for the camp, earns an offer from the camp, ends up coming back for a visit and committing, similar to Victor Sanchez-Hernandez. To me, those guys where it's like, I'm a little more surprised about Macon because like, wait, how did he not already have an offer? Again, you watch the film and it's like, wait, how do I not know about this guy? And then,
So yeah, no. For anybody who doesn't know a little bit more on his backstory, he goes to a very new high school. Like his high school didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago. So this is something where it's still a very new program and there's a lot going on there where, okay, yeah, sometimes those are the kind of guys that fly under the radar. And as you were talking, I kind of thought about him in the same light that I did that all the everydayers know. My favorite player in last year's class, who obviously, unfortunately, has gone to USC, in Ratumana Bulubulavu. Or it's somebody who was super under recruited at the beginning of the cycle. Washington snaps him up early. It's a really nice get. And obviously they hold on to him late. They sign him as he, improves and ultimately becomes a 4-star on signing day. I don't know if that's going to happen with Macon, where I don't think he's got the same, just a couple of the production mainly is the biggest thing in my opinion, but a couple of those things that made Ratumana such an amazing prospect. But I think that he's not too far behind. And the more you look at it, if this is a guy who all of a sudden, Oregon offers in a month or two, and some of these other big time West Coast schools, whatever, they start offering, like, it might be a case of it's too little too late and he's locked in with Washington. But I could see that happening in the same light with him just because of just the way he's come up. And, we've talked about his background as a wrestler, and it's really interesting to see how it's all come around in terms of just his recruitment. And Washington did a really good job of identifying him when they did. And just like, all right, we need to offer this guy and we need to get him now. Because this is somebody who, if we don't, isn't going to last long into his senior season before he starts getting some bigger offers. And Lars, that being said, we got a couple minutes before we get out of here. There's been so many recruits over the last couple of days. I've lost count. I think it's up to 8 now, something like that. It's wild. Prediction time. Who's next and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say probably Darius Afalava, offensive lineman from Skybridge, has got to be coming soon. Obviously, ZRS has his July 1st commitment date, so does
Desi, yeah.
Right, and so there's a few others that are kind of more, and I believe LaRue is well over a month out, or maybe at least a couple weeks out, because he was scheduled like a late July commitment.
That's Ryland Allen too, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and so there's a couple. So I think for that reason, I'm just throwing out those names to, I guess, cushion my pick of Darius Afalava, because I have to imagine he will come in probably within, I would say, before July 1st. I guess if I have to pick somebody who would come in before July, it would be him, because again, I'm trying to think. Well, it's like, talk about Ploog, talk about those guys. Okay, now they are in. Now who else is left? For me, yeah, that I would go Darius Afalava.
So I'm going to go Ryland Allen, where he started getting those Washington crystal balls, which is really interesting to see when you've got a commitment date set for July 29th. And that's just one that I want to keep an eye on when I look at it. And this is a guy who I just absolutely love everything about his film. Listed at 5'11", 165. He's probably going to be, a nickel or a safety at the next level. But if he adds weight, he's somebody who I think compete really, really early on in his career. a la Taylor Rapp, where Taylor, I think, was a little bit more technically sound than what Rylan D'Aryhian is, but RDA is just a better athlete. He's just a more exciting athlete to watch than what Taylor was. Taylor just played the game so well that it was hard to keep him off the field, even with Budda Baker there as well. And I think that that's somebody who, even, with that July 29th commitment date, with just the way everything has come around, if Washington is just saying, hey, we kind of need you to do this soon, it seems like he might be willing to do that following the official visit. And he's a 3-star right now, but that's one of those guys that by signing day, I think could end up as a 4-star prospect. And Lars, with that being said, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all the everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. We're going to get back to a regular schedule somewhat soon with all the commits going on. We're having a lot of fun. We're making sure that we can keep you up to date with everything that's going on while, taking some time for ourselves as well, especially with me, being on vacation for the next 36 hours or whatever it might be by the time you're all are listening to this. So with that being said, make sure for whatever new updates we might have for you, you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content 3 times a week right now, plus bonus content with some big commits and other things like that. The best way to make sure you're still in the know is by clicking the little bell so you get notified whenever we post a new video. Please like the video as well. Leave us a comment down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and we'll leave us a 5-star review for your audio only. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk to you on Friday.